Summit, how are you doing? We're ready to start our next panel, which deals with really not more money, more problems, but once you get the money, what are some of the issues you need to consider with respect to spending that money and then showing return on investment of what you spend. We have two panelists who are very knowledgeable, and I'm really happy that they're with us today. David Merlet is actually on involved in many different ways in this business. As the managing director of Blue Run Media, he is doing firsthand campaigns for his own projects and his co-production projects, which range from independent to studio projects. And then as the executive director and founder of the National Crowdfunding Association, he's dealing with these kinds of issues with many of the crowdfunding platforms and other players in the ecosystem. And he sits on the board of governors of the World Crowdfund Federation, which is dealing with these issues across multiple countries. So we have a great expert, and I'll let him introduce himself for a couple more minutes.
Sure, thank you. Usually I don't need a mic, so I want to blast you out. I'm very pleased to be here, and I think this is it. I'm listening to some of the other panels this morning. We want to make sure we cover whichever way we want to talk about this. But yeah, my predominant focus right now is in the film industry, and it has been actually, and that's actually what got me into crowdfunding. But I'm also an attorney, CPA, and been practicing and raising money for people through the years. So our focus right now with Blue Run Crowdfund is is going out and raising money for helping some rather large films that are about to launch in the wake of what we've seen, and it's really exciting. So some major films are coming with some large talent attached, and we're trying to put together some interesting ways of crowdfunding those things.
And we also have David Sharifi, who's an attorney practicing in many interesting transactional areas of law, but he has been focusing on crowdfunding issues both on the giving side and now on the equity-based side as the new regulations are being rolled out with respect to the Jobs Act, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about his practice.
Thank you. I'm David Sharifi, entertainment technology lawyer based here in LA. And we focus on, we like to put ourselves out there as optimized for tech companies, a law firm that handles transactional deals as well as intellectual property protection, and just kind of lean startup methodology to bring an idea into the concept phase, into market validation, and hopefully mass growth. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a pleasure meeting you.
And my name is Mariana Danilovich. I am the managing director of Hollywood Portfolio, and have been on the film and television side like David with Sony Pictures, Mandel Entertainment, a bunch of top tier companies, Fox, 20th Century Fox, and Aspairs, and have done digital media incubation before it was actually popular, back to the Ideal Lab days. And have worked with startups in digital media exclusively my whole career. So I am thrilled that we have crowdfunding platforms available to now democratize the funding process, and we don't have to go back to Silicon Valley, we don't have to find interesting Japanese and German financing transactions and deals, tax shelters and things like that to just fund our creative projects today. So from that perspective, I'm going to ask first question to both of you actually. What are you seeing currently as some of the most interesting issues with respect to crowdfunding?
Shall I go? My pause is to only just try to figure out where to begin with that question. It quite literally, in my world, is changing almost day to day, the things that are happening. So I think the most interesting is not the details of the Veronica Mars and Zach's deal. It's the fact that they've kicked open a door and made some things become possible in people's minds. And I think that where the most interesting probably is where it's headed in a very rapid pace. We're going to quickly see the the maturing of the marketplace in a way of combinations of equity and reward-based crowdfunding, some matching dollar programs, larger corporate institutions starting to throw things in those perk bags, you know, get Starbucks and things like that. I know that's what we're doing and some other things. And being able to reach out to a larger audience and build more of a community of people who support film in this way. So and that's not even talking about Jobs Act. I mean, Jobs Act's the next thing. I mean, so it's all happening exceedingly quickly, and there's a lot of opportunities out there.
So David Sharifi, why even have equity investment in a motion picture? Why give away a piece of equity of that movie if there's donation-based funding?
That's a good point. I think the crowdfunding space is obviously interesting because, as you mentioned, the democratization of funding. I think less than 5%, or maybe even less than fewer than 1% of startup companies get angel investment or VC capital. Many kind of bootstrap and use credit cards and mortgages. I know I did when I founded my own company while in law school. And today, you really have an opportunity to obviously tap into the masses and get your project funded. From an entertainment standpoint, I think that a lot of the producers or content producers today have a leg up because you can already make captivated content. And if you use that on a crowdfunding platform, your chances of success are even that much better. I mean, you still have to market the product and you still need some publicity. But if I was going to do a crowdfunding campaign, I don't know much about producing video except for doing the contract for the video. But you guys likely can make some great video, and video is obviously the preferred platform. So that's really interesting. From an equity perspective, I think today we should kind of decide what are the different types of crowdfunding models that are available today and might be available in about a year from now. Right now, most crowdfunding platforms are doing donation-based gifts, as you guys have been probably hearing most of the day. There are some lending platforms where you can actually borrow money as a loan, so it's not a donation, you have to repay that money. And there's some hybrid platforms as well, but the equity aspect of it is where it kind of is a $64,000 question right now, and soon enough, people will invest in your company not because you're passionate about your project, not because they think it's a really cool idea, but because they're financially incentivized to kind of join you on that American dream of, you know, making it big or making your it's an investment decision essentially. So I think it's going to be very interesting, as David mentioned, the kind of combinations of rewards and equities that will come about. It's really, it's completely up to you, and you're going to have so many options to basically incentivize someone to capitalize your company, whether it's through a reward platform, whether it's through equity and investment, whether it's just because they like your smile. You know, there's a lot of reasons why people are giving now, and there's going to be even more reasons.
So the question for you guys is, before we jump in and take some questions from the audience, as I suspect you may have a few, could you explain just kind of in a nutshell what the Jobs Act may present to us, and when is it coming in terms of, when is the SEC actually going to approve this as a funding instrument?
The Jobs Act is the Jumpstart America's Small Business Act, or something like that. Acronym is JOBS. And it's basically designed to allow startups to raise money a little bit easier. Today, if you have a startup, the main sources of funding are angel investment or bank loan, or like I said, credit cards. You cannot legally solicit investment in exchange for equity shares in your company. So if I have 1,000 shares in my S corporation here in California, I can't offer you guys, you know, $1,000 per share and raise $1 million right now.
Unless they're accredited investor.
Unless you're a credit investor, and I've registered with the SEC, and I've done basically the amount of legal legwork needed to do an initial public offering. So it's a tremendous hurdle, obviously, for today's entrepreneurs or any startup. And that barrier is being relaxed a little bit through the Jobs Act. Now, it's been signed into law, and it's actually became effective in January of this year. But the SEC has specifically said that they will not allow solicitation of equity-based fundraising until they write out the rules. And I think a lot of experts, David can have an opinion on this. It's probably going to come into effect in about a year from now. I know that our firm is really starting to gear up to offer legal products for companies that are seeking that type of equity-based financing. And that's kind of the forecast in terms of it, when it's going to be legalized. And obviously there's going to be a lot of trial and error in terms of getting it right, but it's really exciting.
Quite exciting. So if someone has, how many of you have an independent project that's currently being financed on one of the platforms? Okay. How many of you are thinking about doing it? Okay. How many of you are going to do it on Kickstarter? No questions asked. Okay. How many of you are going to do it on Indiegogo? No questions asked. Okay. How many of you are going to do it on another platform? How many platforms do you think there are?
Many, hundreds.
When I moderated this last year, we came up with 2,000. I don't know, David, if you know if there are more.
Well, most of them are just cute names with a domain, with a website. You know, a lot of them, I mean, I don't mean to be facetious, but a lot of people, it depends on what you call a platform. And I don't blame them. I mean, that sounded too harsh. Because, I mean, they're entrepreneurs that want to get out there, but there's active platforms for film. I would say, you know, I think you could count them on both hands, as far as ones that I would.
So tell us, which ones would you recommend then? No, I'm putting you in a really
Well, because
bad
of my position
position.
in the National Association, I have a hard time saying that. I'll tell you which ones
But
were.
it was such a quick question.
Well,
You
no,
almost answered it.
I'll tell you which ones were. Let me switch hats. Let me put on my Blue Run hat. I'll tell you which ones we're using for Blue Run for the large projects,
That's fair.
and that'll be predominantly Kickstarter. You know, one of the things that a lot of people are going, I know the guys at Indiegogo, and I don't know if there are anybody, but I was on the other panel. You know, I don't, let me just tell you this, and I'll wade into an issue I know is on a lot of people's minds, and that is, do you do the all or nothing, or do you do the tiered pull-out? I strongly encourage you to do the all or nothing. And that, my own clients go, what? You know, I know Slav and those guys at Indiegogo. I think it's predominantly a marketing thing, you know, to get a lot of business, trying to get business out of Kickstarter. It's not, I don't think it's in your best interest. If you're needing to raise $100,000 for your film and you raise 25 and you pull that money out, you're going to have some mad people because now you can't go finish your film. And so what was accomplished? You got some money, Indiegogo made their fee on something rather than nothing, but your backers, where are they? And so, and you take away the whole, you know, there's two major, we talked about this on the other panel for those who were in there, the two major, you know, secret sauces of crowdfunding is the all or nothing system, well, which encourages people to want to support you. I think there's an urgency to it. And the pledge system, which says, I'll pledge. You got to go find 99 other fools, but I'll pledge. Well, you take that out, and now I know my money's immediately going to you, and you might take less than what you asked for, what you need. I'm going to think twice about that. And we're seeing that empirically. So I encourage, I'm not saying that don't use Indiegogo. I'm just encouraging you not to be stuck toward Indiegogo just because it's got the tiered system. I strongly recommend you do all or nothing on either one. And the statistics will bear out that that's a better chance for you.
So JR gave me this, I have
Can I
this
just
secret
comment?
table. Go ahead.
And I think it's really project-based. I think if you're an entertainment platform company, or you're looking to produce some kind of entertainment programming, you know, you should really evaluate the right type of platform for you, depending on your budget, how many people you have on your team, what stage of development you're in. These things are very important. And I think crowdfunding being as kind of new and complicated as this is right now, entertainment financing has always been kind of complicated. And it's kind of really its own animal in terms of if you're financing any type of venture, it's one thing, you're financing an entertainment project, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, and the tiered system I think works quite well, and if you're doing widgets or other things, and there's ways in which it makes sense. So I don't mean that, I'm just talking purely about like a feature film financing.
So don't you get in trouble with the rewards, because based on what JR's put together here, which is really handy dandy, I wish I could share it with everyone. Maybe he'll put it on the website. It says that for the Kickstarter, limits on rewards to the donors are basically up to $10,000, where with Indiegogo you can do anything. So if you give someone let's say, a speaking part or a non-speaking part in your movie or in your TV series, don't you get sort of in the dangerous territory? What's the value of that award on the market? So is there,
That's a loaded, but there's various problems with that one, and SAC's experiencing that right now, but with the 10,000. But you want to talk about it?
Well, I mean, I think the barrier of $10,000 pledge is not really an issue because I think, as the previous panel mentioned, if someone wants to donate more than $10,000, they'll call you, and you'll probably be able to get that fund. That's not going to probably lose you that much money. But to the issue of offering kind of a screen roll, I think it's very interesting because I think the California Labor Commission is going to probably wake up to this soon and realize that you're essentially charging for employment. If I allow you to donate $5,000 in exchange for a background role or even a speaking role on my film, that could be interpreted as such. So you really have to be careful. And of course, this is all kind of uncharted territory for all of us, and we're kind of going as it goes. But I think that's a reasonable interpretation, and I'm really surprised that some of the major motion pictures kind of hear from that. On the tax side, I believe Kickstarter, will send you a 1099 if you raise from up to 200 people. I mean, there's all these kind of I'm not a tax attorney by any means, so don't take this with a huge dash of salt. But you should definitely look at the tax implications and see if there's certain ceilings where you could take advantage of a tax situation where one more investor all of a sudden takes you to a higher tax tier. So take a look at that, and like I said, it's probably going to be project based. Are you looking for 500K or are you looking for 50,000? Things like that will definitely kind of steer you in the right direction in terms of setting up your campaign on the right platform and also creating the right types of incentives to stay on the right side of the.
And there's others too. Rocket Pilot, I'm just hearing rattle off a bunch of names. And I know there was one that's here in the town before. You should consider those. That's all.
Yeah, there's a realistic.
Consider them, but if you're bringing the eyeballs, then you should definitely consider them. Or if it's a niche group like this other one here, where it's part of the audience that you have, then you should definitely consider it. I think it's dangerous if you're not bringing 100% of the eyeballs and you're doing fairly generic to go to a narrow, narrow platform.
So,
I hate to say that because they're entrepreneurs and they're trying to get out there.
So David, that's a really good point. As you put out all your projects up on Kickstarter and maybe others, are you bringing all of your eyeballs, or how much are you expecting to get from Kickstarter's eyeballs? And then are you doing other campaigns surrounding this to get more eyeballs in?
Well, we have, and she just did the graphic, we have partnerships with social media campaign companies, Crowdjammer, which will be taking the social media connections of the talent that's attached and other people involved and driving the crowd into Kickstarter. At the same time, we're doing marketing to accredited investors, driving them into the equity crowdfunding raise, which runs simultaneous. We're a little different. I mean, because we're managing large campaigns, so it's. If we're talking to an entrepreneur who's got somebody's out there trying to raise, you want to raise $50,000, $100,000 for your thing, then yeah, you're going to be bringing most of your eyeballs or the next layer out. You're expecting them to go and help you. I'll tell you a little statistic, and that you can kill that.
You should keep this because we actually had people come up to me before the panel saying that they're doing big campaigns.
Okay.
So we have.
Well, I was going to tell a statistic that might be useful to you. There's enough transactions that have been happening now that you can start. We're starting to build some empirical data. And if you're not familiar with this, if I was to say, what do you think the odds are? How much money do you think you need to raise, or pledges you need to get in order to be successful? To kind of think, okay, I'm probably going to get all my money. Most people would say 70%, 80%, and pledges something in that range. I'm not saying this is automatic for you. I'm saying the average that works out happens to be about the golden mean. It happens to be about 38%. Usually, before you reach around 30-35%, you've got about a 10% chance of completing your fund. Once you hit 38, somewhere in that percent, it jumps to almost an 80% chance to complete your fund. statistically, yours could be very different. So nobody should be your tipping point is something different. And then, but that's shown over time, and I don't have time here, but all the way back to, I tell you a story about the Statue of Liberty and the crowdfunding of the base of that. It happened to work out the same way. And there's an interesting human phenomenon on that. So my point being is, now back to the question, is I tell people very strongly, when you go into a crowdfunding campaign, you make sure you know where 35% is going to come from. I mean, pretty sure. I'm not saying have it in the bank, but you need to know where about that's going to come from. I wouldn't start a campaign until I knew that.
And that would be sort of from your
Friends,
contacts.
family, and the next layer out.
Kind of on that point, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, hearing those numbers, I think that any crowdfunding entrepreneur or producer really needs to do a lot of pre-planning in terms of, I like to usually advise my clients, whatever you're building, whether it's a movie or it's a new product, the way Apple gets those people that line up outside the Apple store for every product launch, those are the fanatics. Those are the people that you want to curate at the beginning stages. Right now, my mom has an iPhone, but she's not one of those people that was standing in line. She's kind of a later adopter. But those fanatical fans, if you will, that's your cachet. And I think that every crowdfunding campaign needs that base, whether it's friends and family, whether you've been collecting emails through a screenshot, whether you've been, pounding the pavement, whatever it is that you're doing, you just need that kind of marketing cachet to be able to get your campaign out there and promote it and get some press coverage, for example, and things like that, so that you can really give yourself a chance. And I guess now we're learning, give yourself a chance to get to that 38% threshold. And then I guess it's all gravy after that. Right?
No.
Then it's a hard work.
Oh,
So
my gosh.
let's go back to that. I like that slide. Thank you for keeping it up. Tell me about the film funder versus the Kickstarter. Let's
Well, Film
address
Funders
that.
are partners of ours, and that we're very close with, and that's launching. It's in beta form right now. It's not something you can go use now, but it's for accredited investors. Now we talked to. I want to make a slight, not correction, but an add-on to what you said. Yeah, absolutely. You can't go out and do a straight-up equity and offer securities right now to people, but you can. If you're not familiar, I would spend some time on a website called Circle Up. And get to know, kind of just get familiar with what they're doing. It's nothing to do with the film industry. They're doing consumer products. It's basically a club for accredited investors. It's getting ready for the Jobs Act, but right now you have to have the golden ticket to get in the door kind of thing. You have to be an accredited investor to get to even come in and see the deals. But that's all going to change quite rapidly, but that's just the way it is right now. Now, what's interesting about Circle Up is what happened last fall. They were just consumer products, is what they're doing. Crowdfunding for accredited investors for just consumer products. But Procter & Gamble and General Mills both wrote them nice big checks to not for the products themselves coming through, but for the portal itself, because they want to sit on the front row. They want a front row seat on things. So what we're working on is a very similar model with Film Funder, and you take out Procter & Gamble and you stick in, I won't name names, but film finance companies and others that will come in. So we're seeing some maturing rather rapidly, and that's what we're building. But, so I want to emphasize, yes, you cannot get out there and sell shares, and you got to be real careful on your own out there selling any sort of promise as to a return at the end of the film. So you might say, so what is this what you're talking about? This is accredited investors only campaigns that we're running, very regulated through broker-dealers. It's sophisticated deals, and we're not doing deals less than total, raising a total at least about $3 million for each film.
And
So,
then as we go through the other sources of funding for film and television, especially film, if you look at the international pre-sales, and then this usually used to be the gap financing. It was comprising anywhere between a few percent to maybe 20-30%, depending on how big the gap was between your prints and advertising domestic sale and your
Right.
international sale. Then where does this fit in that scheme of things today? Has the gap become now 90% of it?
I had a meeting again this morning with a very large producer with name talent, and I keep getting the same number. It's coincidental, maybe. It's just one more time. I almost could finish your sentence. And I said, "What's your budget? What are you looking for?" They said, $8 million, looking for 3. I was like, Well, that's the fifth time I've heard that. So somewhere in there, and that's the gap, that they I keep finding. Now, that's not all cases, but it's just interesting that.
That's what it used to be called gap finding.
Yeah, and now this
Years.
is
Yeah.
filling a new form filling that gap.
Instead of trying to go to equity investors who are few and far between for many years or so. So let me ask the audience, what do you want to hear from our?
Yeah, on the last panel, someone had mentioned that there's only a 45% success rate in getting all your, meeting your goals with Kickstarter and with Indiegogo. So if that's the case, it's kind of scary to go all or nothing with Kickstarter if you don't reach the goal and you don't get any of the money.
I think that's the trade-off. I think it's that does seem logical. Why would you basically don't have a cash out option? You have
You
your all
do
over.
with Indiegogo.
Right, but nonetheless, Kickstarter is attracting a lot of projects. So I think it's definitely project specific. But these two platforms seem to be the front runners in terms of a good place to raise money right now. So at least your choice isn't that difficult. You can kind of pick between the two if you're looking for that kind of donation-based crowdfunding.
And I would just say, not to draw attention to you necessarily or anybody else, but I get this constantly. And I think we have to kind of have a little personal check in the mirror a minute. You're not out here just to raise a little bit of money, right? You're trying to get your film financed. So if you're out there just to want to get some money from people, yeah, the tiered system, you'll get some money from people. If you're trying to raise money for your film, which I think is the point, then raise the money that you can actually get for your film and follow through. Don't have a bunch of mad back.
And actually make the film.
And you have the issues of those people that funded your project partially, and now you owe them some kind of reward, but you don't have the funds to deliver the entire project. So where do you stand there? I mean, you could maybe cash out, but you still have, even from a legal sense, you've made a promise and you've received a reward. So there might be some kind of liability.
But I think she's raising a really good point, which is you put a lot of effort to even get that, less than 45%, to get less than 30, 40, 50% of your budget, and that effort is then not being compensated.
45%.
But it's not, you're not going to be compensated for the effort. You're going to be compensated to actually create your dream project, right?
45% is a great chance. I mean, what are your chances of walking into Paramount Studios with a script and getting that funded? And just one more issue on just fundraising for entertainment projects. I think it's really interesting is that unlike other types of other ventures that need funding, you can offer points, percentage points, revenue share, profit participation, call it whatever you want. And that's a really interesting layer in entertainment financing that's been going on for decades, obviously. But now on the crowdfunding side and also on the equity side, how do you structure that? I think that if I have a great screenplay and I'm looking to get that made, usually when I have a screenplay client or I have a producer client, I don't negotiate equity in the underlying copyright, ever. You never want 15 people to own a small percentage of your copyright. That's just the death knell in terms of the entertainment project getting off the ground. So I think that equity-based crowdfunding for entertainment projects is a little bit of it's a dubious or ambiguous space because while there's great opportunity to offer rewards, and there's a lot of great ways that these entertainment projects are getting funded right now, I don't know if you really, and it would be interesting to see how it kind of plays out in terms of offering equity into the copyright.
But we don't offer the equity in copyright. We offer equity into an entity that's going to take a certain percentage of the revenue.
Right, and then that becomes.
And what is it then, or gross, or how do you define that
Right,
entity?
well that's where.
The devil's in the details, but
Exactly.
the idea is to be as transparent as possible. I mean, if you can already tell just from the way I'm talking, I'm very focused on those people that are backing you and investing in you and making sure they get what they need. To me, that's where we have to draw the line. We have to focus on that because that's what makes this, that's our golden goose, is keeping them happy and they'll come back and back more of your films and other people's films.
And start thinking a little bit, just to take your questions, start thinking much more like, the traditional entertainment producer. There's a whole merchandising arm to your content that I think could be tremendously valuable. It's usually more valuable for the studios than the actual feature film. So what's the merchandising play on your content? And are you going to maybe incorporate some kind of incentives that are merch related to the crowdfunding aspect? I think that's going to be pretty interesting as well.
We have a question in the second row.
Thank you, good panel. I I know you mentioned you're not a tax lawyer, but I'm wondering I'm just going to focus on the traditional crowdfunding for entertainment, but there's still a lot of tax questions out there about Kickstarter campaigns. First of all, is the donation a gift, and is a gift taxable? Secondly, when is the tax due on those payments that come in? Is it due that tax year, or can you do an accrual method, spread it out over several years? Any thoughts on these? There's other tax questions.
I was thinking about, well, again, I'm not a tax lawyer, and I think that, we can't get into, I think the tax implications are probably going to be triggered by the platform you're on, the type of donation you're bringing in, or type of capital that you're bringing in, and also the numbers are probably going to be, tax laws usually like $201,000 is much more taxes than $199,000. So these are going to be all considerations. But I was anticipating this question. I think the answer is that probably a good problem to have, because you're raising money, and a lot of us entrepreneurs, myself included, usually we don't think about that stuff. We just want to raise the money and make the project.
Except for if you're taking that money and to fulfill the rewards and do everything you tell that you're going to do in that film, there may be nothing left over.
My best advice would be to hook up with a experienced startup entertainment crowdfunding attorney that the reason I know that, the reason I say it is so that usually attorneys have a lot of CPAs in their Rolodex that they can refer you to, and I think together, consulting with a CPA, you can definitely carve out a funding strategy that is the most tax advantageous.
But this is a complex proposition, crowdfunding is, I think, what we're trying to drive home, which is, and you guys have driven it home, it's the way to get to do your dream project, but you do need legal advice, and you do need tax advice, and you need it sooner than if you were raising money just from friends and family, or if you're going to an experienced source of funding that's funded film projects and you have an overhead deal with them. These issues are not as necessarily they're not your concern until maybe at the end of the project. Now they're your concern right away. So that's a great question. Let's take one more.
If you're funding for a feature film project, so you do need a certain amount of money if you're really going to do it right. You're not just doing it right, it's semi-professionally. Say it's $1 million project, which is a little bit on the low end, but it's a high end